is to stress out some systematic aspects of emotions. Therefore, I apologize, sometimes I may sound a little bit dogmatic, but I'm willing to to adjust. So after this captatio benevolentiae, I can start. Some things I don't mean so dogmatic, like this may sound. Rationality and emotions are separated by their diverse grounds and characteristics. The grounds of rationality may be truth, publicity, and the validity of propositions in the space of giving and accepting reasons. Some forms of rationality are teleological. Grounds of emotions or characteristics of emotions are our bodily existence, individuality or privacy, and the natural biological conditions. And therefore they are embedded in a causal setting. Both spheres make a dichotomy within the unity of a person. In this regard, I disagree with Martha Nussbaum's idea to ascribe intelligence directly to emotions, since intelligence, in my view, requires reason and the use of conceptual schemes. But there are also spheres where intelligent rationality and emotions seem to amalgamate. Rational emotions, emotive reason, emotional intelligence, moral sentiments, empathy, or shared feelings of like and dislike within a community, enthusiasm of a soccer fans in a stadium, and religious feelings are matters of fact given in our everyday life. But they transcend the singularity and privacy of individual emotions, as well as the intellectual sphere of truth and timeless validity of propositions we find in rational discourse. This particular sphere constitutes specifically human beings and the diversity of cultures. Therefore, the dichotomy of rationality and emotions cannot be an exclusive bipolarity. In this talk, I distinguish, slightly inspired by Rousseau's second discourse, three types of emotions. First-order emotions are the particular, private, directly connected emotions we feel connected to our senses and corporeal existence as single persons: fear, joy, pleasure, pain, hunger, happiness, self-love. Second-order emotions are shared emotions, which we only have in an intersubjective relation. That's somehow like Strawson's distinction. For example, love, jealousy, pity, shyness, empathy, or remorse. And third-order emotions are feelings caused more or less directly by reason. For example, philanthropy, respect, recognition, disrespect, the intellectual joy we have if we find a solution to a complicated mathematical calculus, or if we manage to play a Beethoven piano sonata. Since that does not mean that these emotions, this type of emotions, is in itself intrinsically rational. It is caused by reason. Since each emotion is an intensive quantum, measurable only on a gradual scale, emotions can increase or decrease gradually and in a continuum. The continuity of the intensity of emotions also makes impossible sharp and clear distinctions among the three orders of emotions I nevertheless try to distinguish. That's the reason why, for example, joy can occur among my examples in the branches of the first and third order of emotions. But even if in both cases we use the same word to refer to this feeling, it is something different to feel joy of sex or the joy of successful playing a Beethoven sonata. Intellectual and bodily joys are different in their way of being given and performed. Contemporary philosophy of emotion often tries to differentiate between emotion, passion, sentiment, feeling, affection, inclination, mood, etc. But this fails, and fruitless dispute then starts coming up with examples and counterexamples in order to avoid this. And I think this fails because emotions are intensive quantums. and they can increase and decrease gradually, and so you can shift from anger to hatred, for example, in a process. In order to avoid this dispute, how we should distinguish between emotion, passion, sentiment, and so on, I will only speak about emotions in a broader sense. Maybe this does not satisfy all philosophical demands of clearness and distinction, but since we deal with a phenomenon which in itself, as an intensive quantum, is of continual and intuitive evidence, and thereby also, because it is intuitive and immediate, somewhat obscure, I hope to get away with this broader sense of emotion. So now I try to distinguish and to order emotions. The Latin root of the word emotion, as emovere, has the meaning of striving upwards, moving up or out, struggle out. This could be interpreted in the following way. In the flux of our stream of consciousness, some appearances stand out, attract, disgust us consciously or subconsciously, and if we are concerned with these events, we feel. This already indicates that emotions imply a specific activity of the feeling person, and in regard to this emotional activity, it does not matter if this is a conscious or subconscious activity. In humans, we find a specific link of individual, first-order emotions to shared or common emotions, to reason in general, and to emotions caused by reason in particular. If we start from individual feelings, first-order feelings, these are emotions one could have only according to his/her individual bodily existence as immediate representations. Examples: hunger, thirst, anger, worry. These first-order feelings have a causal relation to the sense data we perceive, and they consist of bodily changes represented by brain functions. These individual feelings are basic, somewhat rough, and necessities of our corporeal, biological existence. And something like illusionary pain, where somebody cut off your feet and you still feel the pain in your feet, even if they are gone, feet are gone, shows that the body is only the outer body is only a necessary precondition for feelings. Sometimes your brain fools you, and then but brain as also a part of your body shows that there is still the necessary condition has to be fulfilled for these type of feelings. William James gave the definition in his article, What is an Emotion? That emotion is a, quote, perception of bodily changes as they occur, quote, end. James' definition is influential until today in the philosophy of emotions, but since in the background of his attempt behaviorist and pragmatist prejudices stand, he has a somewhat distorted picture. For example, he explains sadness in this way: we start crying, this we perceive as bodily change, and then we become sad. For a more phenomenological description, it is the other way around. Because we feel sad, we start crying, at least sometimes. One could say that from a phenomenological point of view, James confuses cause and effect by a hasty generalization. I would argue for both. In the case of some emotions, the bodily change can be the cause and our feeling is the effect. For example, when we feel thirsty or hungry. And in regard to some other basic emotions, our feeling is the cause, and then the bodily change is the effect. Sadness, sometimes. The third possibility is a matter of fact too, namely that both bodily change in our external body and the feeling happen simultaneously, without a priority of one of them. It is very interesting that the basic first-order feelings can mingle and amalgamate with each other, and then they create a more complex and challenging interior life of a person. We can, for example, imagine very simply a hunting man in Stone Age who is at the same time, while observing a dangerous animal, feeling hunger, expectation, excitement, worry, pride, etc. In relation to our rationality, these basic emotions can function as an indicator, going together with rational plans. An obscure feeling of fear could warn us not to execute an action, or it gives an impulse to do something. As a matter of fact, these warning and provoking feelings often misguide us, showing later that they initiated an action which then afterwards turned out to be quite irrational. This proves again that our emotions and our rationality do not automatically cooperate. Even if it sometimes happens, this is only by chance. In this regard, I would say I would hold for emotions a non-cognitivist view. As Hegel correctly highlighted in his Anthropology, there is already implied in these individual first-order emotions a particular self-relation. We heard yesterday in your talk already that in this first order I would agree completely to this picture. So there is already a particular self-relation in it, even if it is not a conceptual or reflective self-relation, because if one feels such an emotion, he, she has the possibility to say, I feel hungry or I feel worried. Therefore, one is able to clarify that this feeling belongs to him, her. For sure, Hegel wasn't the only one observing this. Descartes, Merleau-Ponty would be other examples for stressing out the importance of this self-relation phenomenon. But how it is to experience this kind of feelings would not be completely eliminated or reduced, could not be eliminated or reduced to conceptual explanations, how it is to feel like a bat. In these singular personal emotions, therefore, self-awareness and non-conceptual content, as well as a specific evidence, are involved and go hand in hand. The self-awareness included in individual emotions implies a certain type of evidence, since we are immediately convinced that this is an emotion oneself has. First-order emotions, therefore, have the characteristics of evidence, self-awareness, privacy, and immediateness. The characteristics of evidence and self-related awareness stand in analogy to rationality, but in reason the evidence derives from conceptual inference, and the self-relation, that this or that is my thought, derives from acts of reflection, both distinguishing first-order emotions from rationality, since in reason we find neither immediacy nor privacy. The privacy of these first-order feelings results from the immediacy of the representational content, given only to oneself and being an individual property. Feelings in general seem to have the tendency to expression. For example, in case we burn our hand, even if nobody is around to hear us or to help, we start shouting with pain feelings. Already Charles Darwin, in his The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, emphasized this, putting this to the frame of evolution, showing that the expression of a feeling could be a selective advantage. Now to second-order feelings, the shared emotions, which transcend the privacy of first-order emotions. The interesting point is that they also contain a non-conceptual aspect. One cannot represent in mere concepts the enthusiasm we feel in the stadium if, for example, our soccer team scores 7-1 against Brazil. These shared feelings are obviously not only possible in regard to our individual existence, but they are embedded in a community feeling similar likes or dislikes emotions. The maybe most advanced theory of this type of shared emotions was developed by Max Scheler. This essential difference we can experience between first and second order emotions. If you watch the same soccer game alone at home on TV screen, something is really missing. The common aspect of individual feelings and shared emotions is that they involve non-conceptual directness. One can use Thomas Nagel's famous phrase, it is somehow to feel, to be, in this or that emotional state. The second aspect of first-order individual feelings, self-awareness, is in this second-order emotions, shared emotions, transformed. Because here we feel not only a state we individually ascribe to ourselves, but rather to us as a group, even if it is true that this group requires individuals as participants performing individually the feeling, but we sense the same, like the others. Therefore, the group feelings imply a self-relation too, but we use in grammatical regard the first person plural to ascribe such emotions to us. We obviously and immediately feel that we are a participant of this group belonging together and performing the we feeling. Second order or shared emotions seem to imply a contradiction, because on the one hand they are a precondition for the development of culture. On the other hand, they seem to be a result of culturalization. I would argue for both, but I will try to avoid a contradiction, since committing contradictions is usually a death sentence for theories, even if Heraclitus and Hegel may be allowed to do something like that, but usually not. I distinguish different regards to avoid the contradiction. In one regard to some second-order emotions, I think they are preconditions for culture, and these emotions could be developed to a higher subtlety after they went through a cultural process of their enhancement. For example, there is the feeling of piety, developed in the frame of family. Therefore, piety is already a result of an existing social group. Family piety would not exist without a family. On the other hand, piety constitutes a specific characteristic of a family. The family becomes this particular family by the specific performance of this type of piety through its members. In this regard, piety is the precondition for the more specific determinations of a family, and in this regard, piety is the precondition for the individuation of this social group. The third order emotions, being caused only by our rationality, the most advanced description of this kind of feelings, I would guess, we find in Kant's Ethics, are the most complicated feelings, but that they perform an own branch is shown by the fact, or my argument herefore would be, that they perform an own branch is shown by the fact that they very often act contrary to both other types of emotions, don't go hand in hand. Moral sentiments, recognition or respect to mankind can conflict with the second order feeling of patriotism, for example, as well as with the first order feeling of fear. If respect to mankind or to all humanity, philanthropy, are imperative, one has the problem to show respect even to an enemy that he or she hates. This makes the plot for several tragedies. And that tragedies can result of emotional conflicts in one and the same person, which then has absolutely no other solution than to die, shows that the third order emotions and their normative type of strict imperativeness are neither reducible to second order nor first order feelings. The process of a cultural transformation of feelings is also a process of abstraction, and this abstraction can cause a weakening or a degeneration of emotions, profoundly criticized by Rousseau. For if somebody shows patriotism, she or he shows an emotion to people he or she will never personally meet. And that's the abstractness in this type of feeling. One only meets specific members of his, her nation and people and then generalizes the feelings he, she has for these to a larger group, including people you will never have acquaintance with. This giving credit to people of no acquaintance is a clear indication of is only reasonable as something which has in background reason, or the generality and universality of reason. The next step is also an approximation or increase of rationality. If someone feels sympathy, not only to his country, to his people, patriotism, but sympathy to all humanity, this universality is also, and rather more, an abstract feeling, indicating rationality. The feeling of philanthropy is neither given nor justified by concrete experience. That would be then my argument for rationality as cause for these type of feelings. Since nobody is able to perform acquaintance to all other humans. Like neuroscience shows, certain brain processes are in the background when we have emotions of empathy, namely the firing of the famous mirror neurons. And a disorder of specific neurotransmitters in the brain region where mirror neurons are located can cause a lack of empathy, happening, for example, in the case of autism. This shows that social emotions, able to develop to greater and greater generality, are not independent of our body. All emotions are causally linked to our body. But this connection to our body obviously does not explain the whole story. It's only the one necessary precondition. Does not explain the whole story of our social, cultural, or rational caused emotions, since universality and abstraction from individuality are determinations one could not find in the surrounding of individuality or specific bodily properties. Piety and empathy may have ground in the concrete corporeal existence. We have to have the perception of or an apprehension of persons we see in our closer surrounding. That means in the contact with family members, and we have to have specific brain processes as a necessary condition. But this is not the sufficient reason for our second order feeling of being forced to show piety to persons we do not even know directly. With the case of someone going to war, we have an example where one puts his own feeling of patriotism, or the strive to follow strictly orders, like Germans sometimes do, above his or her corporeal existence. This marks an example showing that social feelings can go against our bodily existence, accepting the risk of a heroic death in the field of honor, putting thereby the feeling for the nation above our self-preservation. In case we then have the third order feeling of respect to all humans, we maybe become pacifist and refuse to go to war, which may then contradict our own feeling of patriotism. Cases like this show that all three types of feeling could not be identical, and that they really compose different spheres, but only in a gradual continuum of our emotional life, making it complex, concrete, and minute. So minute that only rational precision could help to clarify what we really desire, feel, and want. Rationality and emotion obviously do not conduct automatically a unity. But to become a harmonious single person, or on a higher level to become a harmonious civilization, we need to perform, as Robert Musil puts it, the hard work to adjust and balance soul and precision. Thank you very much.